Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome in. We are back with another 2025 NFL season preview. The number 23 team on our power rankings, your New York Football Giants. Good to talk about this team today. Obviously, made a few high-profile selections in the first round. A head coach and a GM situation that are essentially trying to keep their jobs here in 2025 and based on what their season performance can bring to the table. An extremely exciting second year wide receiver, one of the best interior defensive linemen in the National Football League. It's good to talk about this team as far as the Giants are concerned. We could jump right into it, kind of talking about my feelings on the head coach and the GM. Like I had mentioned, both Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen are looking to be able to keep their job for what their performance will end up being this season for the Giants. And there's a lot of pressure on them put on by the Mara family to have a successful season. And obviously, they have sort of hitched their wagons to a combination of Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, and Jackson Dart this season. So we'll see when and if Jackson Dart does end up getting work in his rookie season. We'll talk about kind of what we've seen out of preseason from him a little bit later on. Brian Daboll, I think, is a solid head coach, but there are some aspects to him that I do have questions marks. So ultimately, I kind of put him at a C. I think realistically, from an offensive mind standpoint, he's a lot better than that grade as far as that is concerned. I think that he does an okay job at making sure that he's a leader as far as the team pushing in the same direction. There has been times in which I kind of question it specifically on the defensive side of the ball, but it's always a little bit tougher for offensive coaches from that aspect too. They really don't have the DC to go with them. And as far as the front office, I'd give it a C minus. I think the trade up for Jackson Dart was actually very reasonable when you're taking a swing on a quarterback, even though I didn't necessarily think of him as a first round graded prospect personally. The fact that they only gave up what was essentially 2/3 to move up and swap up, I think is perfectly fine compared to, some other quarterback trades of the past or what the Falcons did for James Pierce Jr., which we'll talk about a little bit later into the countdown. So I thought it was a fine trade in that aspect. I think there were some things along the offensive line that are certainly questionable. Obviously, the Evan Neal pick continues to be a sore spot for the Giants front office. And ultimately, this is going to come down to what this defensive line can do to be able to supplement the entire defense and allow Brian Daboll's offense ability to really take over. And that's really what the team direction is, given the fact that they're in a place in which this head coach and GM are trying to save their jobs. This is about, hey, Brian Daboll on offense, can you continue to work your magic similar to what you did with Daniel Jones to get them into the playoffs? Can you have another successful season with the defensive line really carrying that side of the ball as well? So with that being said, let's go ahead and get to the offseason review. So as we took a look at the offseason review for the New York Giants, I think it's an interesting thing. Some of these guys, I really don't think there's anything too crazy that they end up having walk out of the door. Obviously, Dan Waller retired and then unretired and is now in Miami. That's a whole thing. Azeez Ojulari, I thought was an okay, kind of supplemental pass rusher on, certain downs as a designated pass rusher. We'll see if he's able to kind of revive his career elsewhere. Isaiah Simmons just got cut by the Packers ultimately. I thought that he actually did some all right things, when he was with the Giants, but nothing really spectacular. Adoree Jackson in the back end, and then Drew Lock, obviously, is a backup quarterback, has now moved on. As far as the additions, Paulson Adebo get a real contract to come over from the Saints, trying to live in that world in which they can be a little bit heavier of a man coverage type of, secondary. Does he have that ability? I think that there could be some upside there. I'm not totally in favor of it, but he is a younger player, still has some upside to be able to tap into. Javon Holland is actually a guy that I really like. I liked him in Miami. I think that he's an incredibly versatile safety, a guy that can really play well on the back end. It's a conversation to be had about the fact that they let Xavier McKinney go and he had an all-pro type of season for the Packers, and then now you turn around and have to pay another safety right after it. All that being said, I think Holland's a young guy that can continue to get better as well. I really like his upside too. Russell Wilson, obviously brought in to be the starting quarterback from week one, according to Brian Daboll, and we'll see how long he is thereafter. We know what Russell Wilson kind of is at this point. He is a competent starter, but a below average one, has the ability to throw the ball deep, still throws one of the best deep balls, or the prettiest deep balls, I'll say specifically, in the National Football League. Jameis Winston obviously filled in for some games for the Cleveland Browns last year. He is a fine backup and a veteran guy that if you don't want to force start into a game, makes sense to continue to have on the roster. Chauncey Golston, to continue to be able to add as far as the defensive side of the ball. I think that, is he going to be able to supercharge this pass rush? Of course not. That's not really his level. But can he help out elsewhere? That I do think is within the cards as far as that aspect is concerned. James Hudson adding to the offensive line depth, or Robertson Harris also adding to that defensive end room. If he can be a starter, I think that is a really good outcome for where the Giants really can go. If he is legitimately day one kind of that type of player, then I think that is a good thing for them to add to the veteran aspect of their defensive line as well. Now, as far as the draft is concerned, like I mentioned earlier, 2 first-round picks in Abdul Carter and Jackson Dart. I think Abdul Carter, because of the Jackson Dart stuff, is a little bit quieter. But as we'll talk a little bit later on, he has flashed plenty in preseason, and he looks like a monster in Penn State. There was a very real and understandable and valid argument for him to be the best, most talented player in the NFL draft this year, and he is going to be a factor. Jackson Dart, again, not a first-round graded quarterback for me personally, but he is somebody that does bring some real arm talent. Ran a pretty rudimentary system at Ole Miss, so there is going to be a lot of role catering that I'll get into in a little bit from Brian Daboll's side. But again, you can understand, especially given the fact that the chatter around him is that they really like his work ethic, like the mental side of the game from him, and the maturity, that you can understand why Brian Daboll ended up falling in love with him and when to go get him. Darius Alexander out of Toledo, a guy that I thought could have gone in the back in the first round, ends up going at the top of the third, I believe, ultimately. And he was a guy that I think has the potential to be a 3-down defensive lineman. Does he get there year one? Obviously, probably a little bit difficult, especially given how well talented this defensive line room is for the Giants. But I really like Darius Alexander, a little bit of older guy, so he comes in mature, ready to contribute right away. A little bit questions about his ceiling, but I do like what he brings to the table. Cam Skattebo out of Arizona State, bust on the scene given their very successful season and their playoff entry as well. Carried the load a lot, and also an underrated catcher of the football out of the backfield. Marcus Mbow, out of Purdue, I thought has a little bit of tackle guard versatility. Going to be interesting to see where exactly they don't place him on the offensive line, but somebody that was worthy of the swing when they ended up taking him as well. So that's the Giants offseason review. Let's go ahead and get to the quarterback position. So I want to go a little bit in depth here as far as what we've seen from Jackson Dart during the preseason. And I know that obviously Jackson Dart's not going to start the year. Russell Wilson obviously is. He comes in at 26 as far as my quarterback tiers are concerned. We know where Russell Wilson is. I'm not going to go deep in depth as far as he is concerned. But I think it's interesting to talk about some of Jackson Dart done in preseason, some of the things that you've seen and where he's excelled. So this first play is pretty clearly going to be kind of a stick concept across the board. What ends up happening is Jackson Dart gives the wide receiver to the top of your screen a little bit of a signal pre-snap, just to have a little bit of an adjustment as far as that is concerned. Takes that little check, wipes his towel off, and the wide receiver ends up running this vertical route. And Jackson Dart, with a man in his face, puts this ball right on the money as far as being able to get that touchdown. And these are things that I saw kind of throughout the entirety of Jackson Dart's preseason tape. Of the 18 completions that he had, only about 4 of them were real kind of multi-read things, which is not the end of the world. I don't want to make it sound like it's a bad thing, but there is, again, a lot of catering to what he did at Ole Miss that is going to continue to happen for Dart to really come in and have success. There were 3 RPOs, 2 regular play action aspects of it, 3 drop back define reads that were kind of, get the ball out quickly, kind of bench staple concepts as well. 3 screens, 2 check downs, and then 1 out of structure free play that is not pictured here. But I think that the 4 true dropbacks and a little bit of play action involved in these pictures that I'm going to show you guys is the things that are going to be the determining factor of if Jackson Dart can have a good quarterback career. I don't think that necessarily a great quarterback is within the cards for him as far as the ceiling is concerned. I think at a baseline, he has the arm talent in which if he has a guy like Brian Daboll continuing to protect him and use him in very specific ways in a similar way to what Brian Daboll did for Daniel Jones, then you can find success with him, certainly. But it is the role catering. How much he can elevate beyond that is going to be the question mark as well. This is a nice play, obviously, given the adjustment to the wide receiver at the top of the screen. This is another one. He's going to hit this in breaker from the slot position. I think this is a really good job of being able to manipulate the second level linebacker with his eyes. And there's some aspects of this in which obviously you're facing second and third stringers that are advantages. But this is exactly what you want to see from a quarterback to be able to mature. And he's able to move that middle linebacker to the left a little bit, throw right behind him for that 15-yard dig, and be able to convert as far as that first down is concerned. So another nice play from Jackson Dart. Third play here, coming out of the bench set as well. I was impressed again with his processing a bit about being able to understand this flood concept to the top of the screen that you're going to see. Flat guy is going to pull that sinking cornerback down. safety is going to be pulled just enough up to be able to go with that vertical route as well. The middle linebacker isn't going to necessarily get over to be able to cover this corner route, and he layers this ball perfectly over the top to be able to convert again. And again, those are the types of things that you're going to want to see from a quarterback that can really continuously upgrade the offense as well. Then this final one, Cam Skattebo versus the Patriots as well, goes in motion very quickly, and he's just going to take the slant really at the bottom of the screen. I wouldn't say slant, more of a skinny post, especially here inside the 8-yard line, essentially. And I think this is a really good throw, kind of into a little bit of a tight window, gets the tight end to lean back over, puts the ball on the money, a little bit behind him to protect the tight end as well, and it's a good throw. So again, I don't think there's anything crazy on the tape that you saw from Jackson Dart, nothing that gets me to jump out of my seat. But I think that what you saw from the entire sample size, again, 18 completions, most of them are the kind of defined reads, play actions, RPOs types of things that are very comfortable for Jackson Dart to do, because a lot of it was the same things that he was doing at a rudimentary offense in Ole Miss, the stuff that Brian Daboll can create for him. And then is the aspect of how much of these other types of things that we just ran through as far as these completions can he ultimately continue to do and get better at. That is going to be the question mark of his ceiling. Now, the Giants are in a tough spot as far as where they're going to start out this year. I don't think they're going to win very many games to start out because of the difficulty of their schedule and, Russell Wilson only being a replacement level quarterback. Does Brian Daboll survive long enough to put Jackson Dart out there and then survive long enough to continue to develop Jackson Dart is going to be a real question mark that I'll get into a little bit later on. With that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at the rest of the roster. So as we take a look at the rest of this roster, and also for those that may not know, I use our lads for all of my roster stuff. They just do the best job. So shout out to our lads. I appreciate you guys for being a great resource. I wanted to kind of take a look at what the roster looks like, obviously around Russell Wilson and Jackson Dart, Jameis Winston, if he does play this year as well, and just a breakdown of where we're at. We'll start with the weapons. Again, Malik Nabers, I think, is already a top 10 wide receiver, and I am trying to be hesitant, or I shouldn't say I'm trying to be. I tend to be hesitant as far as being able to declare guys after just rookie years of what they show. But sometimes when you see a guy be this special, like Malik Nabers was, like Brian Thomas Jr. was, then you give it to him and you understand the type of talent that you're dealing with. Malik Nabers obviously well earned as far as what he was able to do in not the best of circumstances, given the fact that they didn't have a lot of weapons surrounding him, given the quarterback play he was in, and the offensive line wasn't all that great either. So shout out to Malik Nabers, true number one wide receiver in the National Football League. Beyond that, you got the deep threat guy in Darius Slayton. Also some interesting Jalen Hyatt, flashes. I'm not going to say that I'm in on Jalen Hyatt. I was never a great Jalen Hyatt guy, but, it seems some flashes from him. Wan'Dale Robinson in the short intermediate areas continues to try and be a guy that can try and supplement what you have in Malik Nabers as well. As far as along the offensive line, Andrew Thomas is legitimately a really good tackle, really good young tackle for sure. Question marks about if he's healthy, of course. It seems like he is going to be ready to go week one. Certainly will help out the rest of this line a lot. John Runyon, John Michael Schmitz. I thought John Michael was fine-ish, but still not great. So you still have a little bit of a question mark there. The guard play is a question mark. John Runyon, Greg Van Roten, obviously they tried out Evan Neal. Hasn't necessarily translated much for Evan Neal yet at the guard position. That's going to be a real question mark continuing throughout the entirety of the season. Jermaine Ellimore and Marcus Mbao, who ends up winning that competition, I guess remains to be seen. Probably going to be Ellimore, and that's probably going to be another hole. So the offensive line leaves a lot to be desired outside of an assumed healthy Andrew Thomas. And then we get to the tight end position. Theo Johnson is somebody that I'll talk about a little bit later on. I really like his athleticism out of Penn State, and I like some of the things that he put on tape last year as well. So going to be talking about him a little bit in a second to say, but I do like his fit within his options. I do like the fact that Daniel Bellinger does bring a little bit of blocking aspect to it, which is nice as well. Chris Manhertz is fine blocking wise too. Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, Jackson Dart talked about the quarterback position again. Jameis is there to make sure that Jackson doesn't get thrown into a game midway if Russ ends up getting hurt. And, you obviously can pass it off to Jackson when you so choose on your own terms. Russ, again, he throws a pretty deep ball. He's going to pass up a lot of things in the middle of the field that are going to be frustrating for me. Can't really move to the level that he used to, obviously. there was limitations to him. As far as the running back situation, Tyrone Tracy Jr., Cam Skattebo, Devin Singletary, really breaking up those two. I do think it'll be those two primarily. I thought Tyrone Tracy Jr. Equipped himself pretty well last year. Got most of the volume. I wouldn't say he was a difference making back by any means, but I do think that he was a competent back. And he should be penciled in as a starter in my personal opinion. Let's go ahead and get to the defense. So this is a fun part, getting to talk about this defense and what they bring to the table as well. Again, it has to start up front. Dexter Lawrence, the second, in my opinion, the second best defensive tackle in the National Football League. One of the most unique players in the National Football League for his ability to be a nose tackle and still be able to consistently create pressure as far as a pass rusher is concerned. He should not be underrated by anybody. He is an awesome football player. Shout out to Dexter Lawrence. Roy Roberts Harris, Raheem Nunez Roaches. How did they decide to delineate some of the snaps as far as those guys being more odd front DNs? And then Darius Alexander, how does he work in it? Because I think that he is somebody that can, again, earn real snaps from day one, even though a third round pick, you may be a little bit questioning that. But I really liked him at Toledo. I think he was better than a third round player, to say the least. As far as the edge rush group, it is one to contend with, and it's difficult. Kayvon Thibodeaux is the third guy as far as this group is concerned, and he is a really good edge rusher. Brian Burns is very good. And Abdul, I think the world of as far as what he was coming out of Penn State and the monster that I expected him to be. And I'll talk about him a little bit later as well. Bobby Okereke, I thought he was a solid inside linebacker. I thought he was a good one. In my opinion, probably top 10 as far as inside linebackers are concerned specifically. Micah McFadden, Chris Board, do they really find, that pairing for him? There is kind of the only question mark as far as the front four or front seven, I'll say, in my personal opinion. And then you look at the cornerback situation again. Paulson Adebo got that real contract from New Orleans, coming over from New Orleans to try and help out what they have in Deonte Banks and Drew Phillips. I think the nickel cornerback spot is still a real question mark and a place in which they really rely upon their pass rush to kind of make up for some of those things as well. And the ability for Paulson Adebo to really elevate his game, same thing for Deonte Banks as younger guys, is going to be the thing that really determines how high of a ceiling this defense ends up having. As far as the safety room is concerned, I really like Tyler Newman and what I saw from him out of Minnesota last year, and I really liked what I like. I really like Javon Holland coming over from Miami, what I saw from him down there with the Dolphins. So I think it's a really nice duo that I'll talk about a little bit later on as well. Let's go ahead and get on to my breakout players for the New York Giants this year. Concerned, I'm going to start out here with Tyler Newman. Like I talked about, I really like what he brought to the table last year for the Giants. And I think a really big thing for the Giants and using Tyler Newman effectively is being able to put him in positions to succeed. And I think that the existence of Javon Holland specifically is going to allow him to do that. He can play a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage. He can play a little bit closer with some aggression as far as that aspect is concerned. You can see throughout these clips of his run stuffs last year, he is not afraid to stick his nose in there and try and make a play. I think that he is really good in that robber role as well. If they can get creative and being able to move him around effectively because of what Javon Holland, a healthy Javon Holland specifically, can provide on the back end, then I really think that he can make an impact as far as being able to be a really good, I won't say primary strong safety, but primary safety in the National Football League, because he's a good tackler, again, physical, understands how to be in the middle of the field effectively in space, and again, when you get him close to the line of scrimmage, he really can make plays. So I like Tyler Newman a lot. As far as the other side of the ball and my breakout player there, that would be one Mr. Theo Johnson that I talked about. I really like his athleticism. I think he can come into his own as far as the tight end position is concerned. And specifically, the issue is how much can you feature him given the fact that Russell Wilson doesn't necessarily love the tight end position to be able to throw to him on a consistent basis. This may be more of a Jackson Dart guy when he ends up coming in, or a Jameis Winston guy for that matter, who Jameis loved throwing to David Njoku last year for the Cleveland Browns. Theo Johnson, in my opinion, has the route running, has the acceleration, has the athleticism, the big body target, obviously has soft hands. I think he has the full package to be able to be a good receiving threat from that tight end position. Just going to be the question mark if the quarterback wants to favor him from that aspect. And given the fact that Malik Nabers obviously is going to get the major portion of the attention, rightfully so, and obviously the ability for guys like Wan'Dale Robinson to be underneath and Darius Slayton to also take the top off the defense, then I think there are going to be opportunities for Theo Johnson to break out too. So those are my two breakout players, Tyler Newman, Theo Johnson. Let's go ahead and get to the thing that's got me excited for the 2020. Thing that's got me excited, and this is going to be preseason tape, but watching Abdul absolutely whoop some Buffalo Bills offensive linemen. And look, Abdul, like I talked about, had a real argument to be the most talented player in the 2025 NFL draft. I think he was a monster out of Penn State. Now, look, there's going to be question marks about, hey, is his usage going to be enough? Can he be a true 3-down edge because of the run defense? I think that he plays with his hair on fire in a significant manner, and then the ability to be really special as far as his pass rush ability. I'm not saying that it's the Micah Parsons thing because that is such a high bar to place on any prospect. I think that is wrong to put on any prospect. But I think when you're talking about the package of being an undersized kind of outside linebacker, but still being able to play with real power to go through some offensive linemen, that's what Abdul still brings to the table, and the athleticism jumps off the table. So some of it is going to be a question mark as far as technique for run defense. That is going to be an understandable question that some people are going to have. But I think the sky's the limit for this kid. And the reality situation is that's why it's got me excited to watch this entire defensive line room. Like I talked about, Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeaux, Raheem Nunes Roaches, War Roberts Harris, Darius Alexander, all those guys surrounding, again, one of the most unique defensive linemen, really one of the most players in the National Football League, and Dexter Lawrence in the middle of that defense. I love what this front seven can bring to the table, and Bobby Okereke is good too. So watching the Giants pass rush is what's got me excited for them in 2025. Let's go ahead and talk about some of my concerns. So look, the main concern that I have for the Giants on the football field in 2025 is the offensive line. And I put Andrew Thomas here only because he was dealing with a little bit of an injury issue. But a significant portion of this offensive line is going to be based around being able to leave Andrew Thomas to be an excellent left tackle, which, again, he has the talent to be, on a consistent basis, and then giving help elsewhere. Is that going to be possible? We'll see if they're able to get enough contributions from the rest of the offensive line. The other concern that I do have is the timeline, as far as, again, this Giants team having to obviously have some success early on with coach and GM to keep their jobs. Now, look, if Mara behind the scenes has said to Dayball, look, you at least got the season, which is going to be an assurance that I think is important to be able to properly, assess the season. Otherwise, if they try and put Dart out there too quickly and things go wrong, then I could be a little bit concerned that not only is this season going to affect, obviously Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen's jobs, but most specifically going to put Jackson Dart in a poor place as far as his development is concerned. Now, ultimately speaking, maybe everything goes fine and it's not a big deal, but that is something that I'm going to be watching as far as the timeline for the Giants season, because the start to this schedule is very difficult. And if they don't get off to a good start, there could be a question mark of if Dayball ends up surviving to midseason as far as his job is concerned. Two hot takes for the Giants 2025 NFL season. First of which, Javon Holland, Tyler Nubin, I think that they could be one of the better safety duos in the National Football League. Like I talked about, I really like Javon Holland. I liked what he could bring to the back end of a defense. I loved it what he brought to Miami as far as that is concerned. Tyler Nubin playing a little bit closer to the offense, to the line of scrimmage, and being able to wreak havoc as far as in the box, and that aspect of it, I think is going to be extremely fun. And there's enough versatility from both of these guys that they can really change the picture on quarterbacks post snap, that I think is going to be very key for this defense. If you combine with that type of level of disguise to be able to protect the cornerbacks and what's going to be brought to the table from that aspect, with the way that I think this defensive line is going to be getting after quarterbacks, then you have a recipe for a really good pass rush, assuming, of course, you can stop the run on early downs, which honestly, when you've got the bigger guys that they have up front, plus Dexter Lawrence in the middle, is something that automatically gets you off to a good start as far as the run defense aspect is concerned. Now, as far as my other hot take, Cam Skattebo, obviously highly touted, or highly talked about, I'll say, running back out of Arizona State. The hot take of sorts is that I think he's a backup running back compared to what Tyrone Tracy put on the table last year. And that's not to say that Tyrone Tracy is a world beater, but I think the Giants should be comfortable with what they saw from Tracy, to trust him in pass protection and aspects of that. Now, Cam Skattebo can catch the ball out of the backfield probably a little bit better than Tyrone Tracy as well, which is a piece of it. Cam Skattebo may be a little bit better as far as close to the goal line in that standpoint. So fantasy-wise, it's a question mark of that aspect, but I think at the very least, this is going to be a split, and even maybe a little bit ahead as far as Tyrone Tracy getting the lion's share of carries. Now, if that ends up happening, we'll see. But that's just my personal feeling as far as what Cam Skattebo is as a prospect in the National Football League. So let's go ahead and get to my predictions. So my bold prediction for the New York Giants of 2025 is going to be lofty expectations. I will certainly accept that, but I do truly feel about this player that much. I think that Abdul Carter will get 10 sacks in his first year in the Giants. And I think that obviously the only thing holding him back is how many snaps he ends up get to rush the passer as far as that aspect is concerned. But man, with the way in which I know Dexter Lawrence is going to be taking attention away from people, with the way in which Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeaux can provide extra pass rush as well, Abdul is going to have some chances to be able to get after the quarterback, and I think ultimately they can confuse some guys on the back end with that safety duo, and Abdul will be able to take advantage, finish some plays, and finish for double-digit sacks. Defensive player of the year, defensive rookie of the year should be well within his grasp in that aspect of it. And as far as the record prediction, I think that this record is indicative of how difficult the start is really for the Giants. I think that if they had a little bit easier of a schedule, I would say, hey, I think that this is a team that really could be in the wild card race ultimately, depending on how things go. But given this division, given the fact that they got to play the AFC West as well, this schedule is very tough to start out. I think that ultimately they end up a 7-10 football team outside the playoffs, and that is a record that's going to put Brian Daboll's job in serious question if he makes it to the end of the season based on how they end up starting. So going to be something to watch for sure. But again, there are aspects of the team that are going to be extremely fun, from Nabers to that defensive line on a consistent basis. So thank you guys so much for coming by for my 2025 Giants NFL season preview. Again, like the video, like the other videos, subscribe to the channel at DMW Sports. We are there at DMW Sports on TikTok and Twitter, Sports DMW on Instagram. Thank you guys so much. Hope you guys have a great day. Peace out.